So, what I'm seeing right here is, in my opinion, democracy at its best. This is the kind of politics I believe in. We're normal people, we get together, we talk about the future of our state, we talk about elections, and we talk about how we're going to organize and win in 2022. Are we ready to do that, Waunakee? Now, I got my start in politics just across the lake here at UW-Madison. Do we have any Badgers in the house? All right. Now, during my time at UW, I started organizing young candidates to run for a local office. I started to find and really trust my voice. And it was also during that time that I told my parents that I was probably not going to be an engineer with my life. And that took them a little bit of time to process. Now, they're from India. They're immigrants from India. And the idea of getting involved in politics was a very foreign concept for them. The idea of running for office was even crazier. You know, what they said is you should find a job after graduating. That was their number one concern. And throughout college, I didn't have a good answer for them either. What kind of job can you get in politics? That was what my dad would always remind me of. But I had a life-changing experience during my time on campus, which is Barack Obama came to campus. And his team asked me to be an opening speaker at the event. And so I stand in front of about 26,000 people, and from that point onwards, I've been on a mission to transform our politics. And the mission is very simple. Right now, the current levels of hate and dehumanization and division in our politics is at an unsustainable level. This is not a sustainable democracy that we'd be able to pass on to our grandchildren. We have to elevate, in my opinion, a much more inclusive, compassionate, and honest form of politics. And it was with that spirit that about a month and a half ago, we announced our exploratory committee for the U.S. Senate. Now, as someone who grew up in Brookfield, Wisconsin, my opinion, which if anyone here knows something about Brookfield, you know it's traditionally a very conservative area, very red area. You know, it's my opinion that in order for us to win statewide, we have to not only go to places where we know we're going to get a lot of votes, but also go to places like my hometown. And because leaders recently have practiced that style of politics, we now have Democratic state representatives representing my hometown and the surrounding areas. So that's very important. Now, one of the big things I think we lack in a lot of elected officials right now is this profound concept I learned during my days as a musician in Madison. Listening. Listening, I think, is one of the most scarce resources I've found in politics. And that is why, as referenced, we launched our Dignity Tour. Because I strongly believe that the number one skill in a U.S. Senator is listening with a lot of humility. And we've been going across the state. We recently were in Blanchardville hearing from dairy farmers. We heard from formerly incarcerated entrepreneurs in Milwaukee. And one of the powerful takeaways from these conversations, as different as they were, as divergent the personal experiences were, the one common theme is they feel like our politics are not serving them. They feel left out. They feel like their politicians aren't truly hearing them, that we need to elevate a more dignified style of politics. And that is why my mission in this race is to elevate a new kind of politics rooted in dignity and opportunity for all. Now, another important thing for a U.S. Senator, I believe, is not just introducing bills. Sometimes you hear this in Congress, messaging bills that were never meant to pass in the first place. I believe the right kind of leadership we need are U.S. Senators who are able to pass legislation. Pass legislation so people here in Waunakee, whether you're a small business owner or you're a farmer, you're getting real relief from the federal government. And that's been my experience over the last decade. As referenced, I founded a group called the Millennial Action Project, which is dedicated to building diverse coalitions of young legislators to pass legislation, particularly on issues where there hasn't been a voice. And with that model, working in Congress and in states across the country, we passed clean energy funding. We passed multiple criminal justice reforms. And probably the one I'm most proud of is after the horrific Parkland shooting, when people said you can't do anything about gun violence, it's too divisive, you can't find enough agreement. We hosted those Parkland students on Capitol Hill in our coalition there. those students were calling on us to change the laws with the moral authority that only they had. And because of those meetings, we built a coalition that said something very simple. The Centers for Disease Control should be able to study gun violence as a public health issue. The CDC had been banned from doing that for two decades. And I'm proud to say that because of that coalition, that legislation passed, and today the CDC is authorized to study gun violence as a public health issue and is funded to do that kind of research. So that is real change. And the reason why I share these stories with you, and there's so many other issues I could share as well, the point is to say that change is possible when we see the best in each other, when we build coalitions, and we organize at the grassroots level. That is the kind of politics that not only I believe in, that's the kind of politics I think we need to pass on to our children and grandchildren. You know, I was looking up the set list of the Raging Grannies. They have a song I like a lot. It's called, "Do You Hear Wisconsin Sing?" Do you hear Wisconsin sing? I believe now is the time for us, our state, to find a new voice. I think the way we're portrayed in the media is not right. We've become this symbol of trench warfare politics, of polarization, of denial of human rights, especially for unarmed black men. We've become a symbol of so much negativity in our politics. And yet, at the same time, we know there's another story too. You know, one of the experiences I had a few years ago here in Madison was we organized a Red and Blue Dialogue series with people who've been left out of politics to talk about higher education and clean energy and the environment. And one takeaway from that I think is so important here is there is a much better politics just beneath the surface. If you have friends who come and visit Wisconsin, what do they always say? Wisconsinites are the nicest people I've ever met. So how come our politics don't reflect that? I believe it's because our leaders are not summoning that style of politics. I believe we can elevate it, and that is the voice I think we need to hear in this election. But it requires courage. It requires us to tune our ears to that voice. It requires us to have the conviction to seize it. It requires us to believe it's possible. And if we do that, we will not just win this election in 2022. We will do something even more profound than that. We will renew our democracy for the next generation. We will actually pass legislation that our communities need right now to take on climate change, to take on gun violence, to make sure we have real economic mobility and more dignified forms of work. That is the opportunity we have in this election. And if you have that same passion that I do to stand up for when the future generations are calling for it, if you feel the same moral obligation that I do to organize right now, please sign up. Join us. Victoria, raise your hand real fast. Sign up. We're building a movement here in Wisconsin that we'll be telling our grandchildren about. Thank you very much. Thank you.